Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Windsor. I'm the contract specialist for Metropolitan Energy Center, and I'll go over the request for proposals for community engagement for electric vehicles in underserved markets. We are holding this webinar without an audience due to technical failures with GoToWebinar. Because of this, there will be no question and answer session. So please send all your questions to rfp@metroenergy.org. Our agenda for the next 30 minutes to an hour is to give you an overview of this request for proposals, then take a detailed look at proposal requirements, including evaluation criteria and format, then quickly review certain administrative conditions and other requirements. I will now give an overview of this request for proposals. Here's the timeline for the RFP. With questions regarding the RFP, they are due by February 22nd, and the proposal itself is due by February 27th. And our expected date for MEC selection notification will be early March. The primary objective of this request for proposals is to contract with community outreach organizations to better understand and help develop the plug-in electrical vehicle market within disadvantaged communities, or DACs, in Missouri and Kansas with community listening sessions. The community listening sessions are expected to identify and improve community level understanding of electric cars and charging stations, plus the key challenges in siting and installing charging stations and other community considerations, and the key partners and site owners who may be interested in installing charging stations. Studies show emissions from heavy vehicles and off-road machinery contribute to asthma rates and family illness, keeping people away from jobs and school. They also contribute to early deaths and other health and social impacts. Many residents of divested communities reside in multi-family units or rent single-family homes, where parking lots of multi-unit residential complexes, as well as curbside and local businesses, are prime candidates for public charging for zero-emission plug-in electric vehicles. A secondary objective is to develop community leaders in 2 to 4 different communities with the knowledge and experience to assist the continued development of electric vehicles in their areas and to advocate on behalf of their communities at the regional and state levels. As such, this RFP is limited to community-based and nonprofit organizations located in, directly adjacent to, or primarily serving disadvantaged communities in Missouri and Kansas, which can be identified using the Department of Energy's Energy Justice Mapping tool called Disadvantages Communities Reporter. And see the link listed here or the supplemental resources described in the RFP. Successful proposers will become subawardees in the small grants program under our Electric Vehicles and Underserved Markets grant. Subawardees will hold community listening sessions and follow up on activities. This community input will inform a site selection process, along with siting criteria determined in conjunction with project staff and the community and using traffic data provided by regional or state planning offices. This work is in preparation for later small grants to install EV charging stations. Within 12 months, MEC will offer small grants to community members for the purpose of installing charging stations, including at public curbside charging, multi-unit dwelling, and workplace locations. The organizations selected in this RFP may plan to assist members of their target communities in their future applications to those installation funds. Again, the geographic scope is limited to disadvantaged communities in Missouri and Kansas as identified using the Department of Energy's Justice Mapping tool, the Disadvantaged Communities Reporter link, or other resources shown here. As for funding allocations, 2 to 4 proposers will be selected to conduct community listening sessions, adjacent activities identified in their proposers' negotiated work scope. The total funding available is $80,000, and grant funding requests should range from $10,000 to $40,000, depending on the proposed geographic scope. The period of performance is defined by your proposal. Work for this project should be scheduled for a 12 to 16-month term to begin immediately upon contract award and notice to proceed. Eligible proposals are limited to community-based and nonprofit organizations. They must be located in or serving urban and rural disadvantaged communities in Missouri and Kansas as described in our geographic scope. And the resources are shown here again. So we are primarily seeking organizations operating within environmental justice areas and other underserved areas where there is a lack of public charging infrastructure. And lastly, joint proposals will be considered with justification. Now I will review the proposal requirements, including the evaluation criteria and the proposal format. With criteria for evaluation, all proposals will be evaluated by a review committee consisting of MEC staff and other members offering technical evaluations. All information required to complete a proposal for funding is provided in this RFP. Proposals will be identified if additional information or documentation is required. No additional information pertaining to submissions, including emails and phone calls, will be considered once the review process is underway. When evaluating projects for funding, the overall quality of the proposal containing all required information in a clear and concise format is a prevailing consideration throughout all categories. Complete and eligible proposals will be ranked in each of the following categories, weighted by rank and given a final score. With criteria for evaluation, first there is project merit, which is how well the proposed project aligns with program objectives for up to a possible 25 points. Then there is an impact and outcomes, which is the extent to which project identifies methods to meaningfully involve environmental justice communities and the extent to which project identifies metrics to track benefits to environmental justice communities. And this category is worth up to 20 points. With public engagement and project sustainability, it is to the extent which project identifies methods for outreach and engagement, incorporates novel concepts, and creates a replicable model, and identifies strategy for identification of site hosts and assistance with follow-on activities and proposals for a possible total of 35 points. Next is cost effectiveness and budget, which entails the reasonableness and cost effectiveness of the project and the completeness and accuracy of your budget for up to 10 points. And lastly, the proposer capacity and the qualifications of your staff and organization, which is up to 10 points. And all of this is for a total of 100 points. To be considered, each proposer must submit a response to this RFP using the format provided. Proposals should be prepared simply and to the proposer's ability to meet the requirements of the RFP. The proposals, including the cover page and table of contents if provided, should not exceed 10 consecutively numbered pages and consist of the proposal, budget, resumes, and optional supplemental and/or confidential files. No hard file copy proposals will be accepted. Proposal documents in the format specified below must be sent to myself at rfp@metroenergy.org. Any confidential or proprietary information should be readily identified, marked, and included in one additional attached document separate from the rest of the proposal. The templates and forms can be found on the RFP webpage at Metro Energy at procurement. And real quick, here are those documents that needed with the file type and the title format to use that I'll go over here now. So here's what in more detail on what we're looking for with each of those documents. First and most important is the proposal narrative, and this should consist of the following sections, which connect the proposed work to the RFP objectives and the evaluation criteria. So with the proposal narrative, start with the cover page and authorization Start by listing your organization, the DACs targeted to benefit from your work, identify partners in the proposed work, and provide a signature from a representative or officer of the proposer organizationally legally authorized to execute contracts and agreements. Next, provide a work summary by providing a brief description of the proposed work for which funding is being requested, and clearly state the anticipated benefits and how the work will help meet the program goals. The summary should be no more than a half a page. The summary should also indicate what makes your proposal unique or innovative. The work narrative and outcomes should provide a narrative that demonstrates with specificity an explanation of how the work will contribute to the program goals. With benefits and outcomes, describe the intended outcomes of the proposed work, including any quantitative and qualitative results you anticipate from the listening sessions and community development activities. Then explain the benefits of the work, including the suitability of the selected DACs for siting of electric vehicle charging stations, and state the size of the target audience pool and anticipated participation rates, and include other data and human-driven outcomes. With environmental justice, your proposals must ensure that the proposed work benefits one or more DACs identified by resources provided by the Justice 40 initiative and in sections 1B and 1D of the RFP. Then provide details about the DACs targeted with your proposal. This may include maps and photos, an explanation of the ways in which the target community is under-resourced and underserved, a description of the types and volume of criteria, pollutants, and greenhouse gases the community is subject to, and more. So with the required documentation, provide a map or other graphic depiction of the DACs. Then with demonstrated engagement, proposals are encouraged to provide documented engagement with local government, community members, and other entities involved in community betterment, and then express an interest in the benefits of vehicle electrification within the target community. Again, any additional information discussing the merits of your proposal is welcome. With a detailed work plan, please provide it in a bulleted list with a description of the activities and tasks that need to be completed for your proposal to be successful. The work plan should also identify a reasonable and timely schedule for activity completion. A sample work plan has been provided in attachment B at the end of the RFP, and I'll discuss shortly. You may wish to use it, modify it, or create your own. Any issues or conditions that need to be resolved before the project can begin and what barriers might be foreseeable shall be clearly stated. And with not enough space, pictures, maps, and other attachments may be included within the proposal narrative if within the 10-page limit, or attached in one additional document called call it supplemental materials. With budget summary and budget narrative, your budget must include an amount necessary to complete the proposed work between 10 and 40,000. Cost sharing by the proposer is not required, but may be proposed. Cost shared proposals will receive minimal benefit during evaluation. Indicate the total grant request and total proposer share, if any. These should add up to the total project budget. For example, a 25,000 grant share and a 5,000 proposer share for 30,000 total project budget. If cost sharing is proposed, describe all other funding sources that will be used at cost sharing for this project and detail any plans to attract additional funding. In this section, provide a narrative description of all cost items, explain why they are necessary to complete the proposed work, and provide a total anticipated cost. And I'll discuss the form here in a second. Full details and basis of costs are to be provided in the budget form. The attached budget form will include line item detail and an explanation of how unit costs were determined. For planning purposes, please note that all costs incurred after award, provided they are identified in your budget, are allowable and allocable to the work plan will be reimbursable and cannot be advanced prior to expenditure. Finally, for the narrative, describe your organizational qualifications, project staff roles and responsibilities, and their capacity to carry out the proposed work. This should include the specific roles and responsibilities of each team member and consist of a brief summary of organizational qualifications and previous accomplishments for similar projects. Prior experience may include community development activities, community listening sessions, organizing for advocacy, alternative fuel and electric vehicle implementation, and more. This section may also include references from customers, particularly local or state governments, and other unique qualifications. On the budget Excel form that I'll show shortly, proposers must provide an itemized listing of all project costs, including personnel costs, negotiated fringe rates, travel costs, supplies, contractual costs, and federal and negotiated indirect rates as applicable. And see the instruction tab of the workbook for detailed use instruction. You can download the Excel workbook form with instructions on how to use the RFP webpage listed here. Here's the blank budget form summary page, and as you will note at the bottom, there are tabs for the contractual, supplies, and other categories. That once inputted information will show totals on the summary page. Besides those things, please fill out your organization's address and contact information, plus indicate your federal UEI and taxi ID numbers. Again, your request may include up to $40,000 in DOE funding. Your total budget should include all costs associated with necessary training and anticipated outreach costs. If this total exceeds $40,000, the overage is considered your share of the cost or cost share. You may also choose to voluntarily provide cost share even if your project costs less than $40,000. Proposers must provide line item detail that describes how the budgeted costs are determined, like the basis of a cost, to include quotes if obtained, or cost estimates, if based on prior experience. Then also how the costs relate to the project in the cost justification column. You can contact me at rfp@metroenergy.org for help with the budget workbook if needed. And save this with your file name, your organization's name /budget. Quotes, if obtained, should be attached in PDF with the other documents. With resumes, provide a resume for 1 to 3 key personnel who will provide material support to your proposed work. If supplemental materials will be provided, such as charts, graphs, and images that support your proposal, but do not fit within the 10-page proposal, they may be included in this optional document containing an index that includes the title and page number of each item and denotes the related section of the proposal narrative. And please name this file proposer name /supplemental. Any confidential or proprietary information should be readily identified, marked, and included in one additional attached document and separate from the rest of the proposal with the file name, your organization /confidential. A sample detailed work plan, which is sometimes referred to as scope of work or scope of services. And for this proposal, we provided a sample work plan under attachment B. So a proposer can choose to just fill in missing information and use it substantially as is, or modify it to better fit your proposal, or provide a custom detailed work plan with similar outcomes. So on the example task 1, prepare the engagement materials and format for community listening sessions. You would prepare information for community listen sessions, such as those items listed here. And as another option, you can provide translation services based on community need. Here are a list of task 2 items, which is community listening sessions for local communities. Again, you can use this template to modify these tasks listed here to fit your proposal. And same with example task 3, which is a list of site hosts follow-on activities. And lastly, you can add issues or conditions that you think might need to be addressed or overcome. Proposers are also encouraged to submit questions in writing to Jeff Windsor at Metro Energy at RFP metroenergy.org by February 22nd. MEC will respond to all questions publicly via an FAQ on its website by February 23rd. And email should use the subject line query for DOE RFP. Again, proposals must be received by February 27th, 2024. MEC is not responsible for technical or transmittal issues when submitting a grant proposal. All proposals with a MEC inbox timestamp of 2 p.m. Central Standard Time or after will automatically be disqualified from the current funding round with no exceptions. Only electronic proposals will be accepted. Hard copy proposals will not be accepted, and please email your proposal to rfp@metroenergy.org with the subject line EVM CBO engage at your organization's name. And as a reminder, your proposal submission packet will need to include your project narrative, resumes, and budget form. And your optional files may include supplemental materials and a confidential information attachment. And now let's briefly run through some administrative items. With confidential or proprietary information, any restrictions of the use of or inspection of material contained within the proposal shall be clearly stated in the proposal itself. Written requests by the proposer for confidentiality shall be submitted to MEC in advance of the proposal submission deadline, along with the proposal material. The proposer must state specifically what elements of the proposal are to be considered confidential or proprietary. And any confidential information must be clearly identified, marked, and separated or packaged from the rest of the proposal. Commingling of confidential or proprietary and other information is not acceptable. Neither a proposer in its entirety or proposal price information will be considered confidential and proprietary. Any information that will be included in any resulting agreement cannot be considered confidential. With organizational conflict of interest, no person or business entity engaged by MEC to prepare the original grant proposal or who has access prior to the solicitation to sensitive information related to this procurement process, including but not limited to requirements, statement of work, or evaluation criteria, will be eligible to directly or indirectly submit or participate in the submission of a proposal for this grant solicitation. MEC has a right to retain proposer's original proposal and other RFP response materials for its files. A proposal submitted in response to this RFP shall constitute a binding offer. Proposers cannot presently be debarred, suspended, proposed for debarment, declared ineligible, or voluntarily excluded from covered transactions by any federal department or agency. And this also applies to state, local, and other governmental agencies. All statistical and physical information contained within this RFP and any amendments and modifications thereto reflect the best and most accurate information available to MEC at the time of RFP preparation. The proposer is required to provide an IRS Form W-9 to MEC if selected for award, and also their unique entity identifier number, which is new and required now. So the proposer is to provide the UEI and their proposal or pledge to obtain one prior to beginning work. Additionally, successful proposers are required to submit their UEI prior to the agreement for purchase, order issuance, or payment from MEC. And here's the link to get an UEI number if you don't have one already. MEC is not liable for any costs incurred by the proposer prior to issuance of a legally executed agreement, purchase order, or other authorized acquisition document. Successful proposers or subawardees under a federal grant project shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws and regulations in the performance of all work under a resulting agreement. Subawardees shall obtain all federal, state, and local permits, authorizations, and approvals of all work performed under the agreement. This includes a government grant agreement between MEC and DOE. Successful proposers who complete a contract agreement upon selection will be considered a subawardee of MEC's grant award from the Department of Energy. Subawardee will manage and expand funding to maximize the funding, including commencing expenditures and activities as quickly as possible, consistent with prudent management. MEC reserves the right to vary from the evaluation criteria listed within this document during the proposal solicitation period as necessary or appropriate. Any modifications to evaluation criteria will be posted on to MEC's website. It is the responsibility of the proposer to check for these changes. With the selection process, additional information may be requested from proposers by MEC prior to final selection. MEC is under no obligation to select or fund any proposal and reserves the right to deny proposals for any reason. Funding is limited. Proposals meeting all the program's general policy guidelines may not necessarily be selected. MEC reserves the right to delay any decision due to budgetary constraints. Proposer selection is final. Selections are based on a competitive process where proposals are weighed against other proposals and overall program goals. Changes unapproved by MEC to a selected proposer's scope of work after selection will not be allowed and may result in MEC rescinding the selection. The selection notices are anticipated to be made in early March, and proposers will be notified of the review committee's determination via email. Awardees are expected to sign and return the agreement to MEC within 4 weeks of receiving the document unless otherwise noted in writing by the MEC contracting specialist. Regarding proposer funding and payment procedures, all funding is conditioned upon the veracity of information provided within the proposal and will require accountability and reporting by the successful proposer. Such reporting will be in accordance with the procedures developed and prescribed by MEC. MEC staff will also conduct periodic site visits to ensure compliance with the agreement. Regarding payments, the following payment procedures will be included in MEC's agreement with the awarded subawardees. Payments must be made in accordance with the provisions set forth in the grant. MEC will pay the subawardees a reasonable, allocable, and allowable cost for based on satisfactory monthly progress and required documentation of the work defined in the grant as determined by MEC. And payments will be contingent upon MEC's timely receipt and acceptance of the required reports described herein. The sub-awardee will be reimbursed based on the submission of a request for payment and an invoicing report form provided by MEC. It will provide a detailed account of the costs, including receipts and invoices, proof of payments to vendors. MEC will withhold payment of the final 10% of the total amount until the sub-awardee has submitted and MEC has accepted all required narrative in financial progress reports enumerated in the grant and agreement. Since we are holding this webinar without an audience, please submit your questions that you may have gotten listening to this webinar and writing to myself at rfp@metroenergy.org. Again, questions will be accepted till February 22nd, and email should use the subject line query for DOE RFA. And again, MEC will respond to all questions publicly via an FAQ on its website by February 23rd at our website link shown here. And in closing, this presentation will be sent to the webinar registrants and available online. If you haven't already, please sign up for notifications on the RFP. Again, proposals must be received by February 22nd, 2024, and please go to our website for further information on environmental issues and to access our grant writing webinar from December of several years back at metroenergy.org. And that concludes the presentation, and thank you for listening to our webinar, and have a great day.